Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Vikas.
Welcome to Better in Tandem, where we explore the power of partnerships.
We're here to bring you unique conversations with amazing people working together to make brilliant things happen.
And through these conversations, you will learn the tools, techniques, highs, lows, and the secrets of working together, because life is
better in tandem. Welcome to episode 1, season 1, day 1 of Better in Tandem. And we're really lucky today to be joined by Jo and Darren Scott, who together founded Truth Creative. And I'll hand over to the other half of Better in Tandem to introduce our guest today.
Yeah, today we have Jo and Darren with us. Really excited to have you join. The reason that we came about to have you both join us today, we reached out to Twitter to see if you had any people that wanted to get involved. And Jo, you very kindly suggested that you'd be up for joining on the basis that you and Darren have been working together for at least 16 years, building Truth Creative and working with clients like St Anne's Hospice and Gary Neville's UA 92. So over to you to do a little introduction to each other.
Of each other.
Go first. Okay. This is Darren Scott. He is the founder of Truth Creative. He is a designer by trade, also a typographic designer as well, but not so much these years. He is award-winning, spent many years at McCann-Erickson, global ad agency, and founded Truth back in 2006.
Wonderful.
This is Jo Scott, Managing Director of Truth, my better half, and the thing that keeps me honest, really, and makes my job a lot easier by running my business and her business together.
So this is going to be a lot of fun, I think, because a lot of couples and partners want to work together. You know, I'm pretty sure most of our friends who are together are like, we should do something. But most of the time they don't get there. And a lot of the time those early conversations don't necessarily work out in terms of starting something. So just talk us through that side of the journey. Like when you first decided we want to do something together and how you actually broached that conversation in a healthy way that actually, led to something happening.
I don't know if it was that intentional, was it really? I think, so we've been working together for about 22 years now, which is half my life. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But we met at McCann-Erickson, so big global ad agency. And when we were there, there's about 400 people there. And I just started in the career in the sector. That was my first proper job as an account executive. And Darren was a senior designer in the design team. Already been there for about 10 years, maybe. And we did the whole agency account handler dating thing. And then
Secret at
first. How long was it a secret for?
Not very long.
6 months, maybe?
Yes.
6 months.
So it's denuded.
Yeah. And then, we ended up getting married. And then I left the agency and went to work for another B2B global agency for a few years. And then literally I was away with some friends in Madrid one weekend. I came back on the Sunday evening and Darren said to me, they're offering voluntary redundancy at McCann's. I'm going to take it and I'm going to start my own agency. I went, okay. So you decided to freelance for a year, didn't you?
Yeah, because I'd worked in McCann's for 10 years since being a graduate. So I'd not really experienced life outside of that bubble. It's a big global agency, so it was the best agency in Manchester at the time, so I didn't feel the need to go anywhere else. It would have been a step down without moving to London or somewhere international. So I was enjoying my time there, and I'd learned my craft, and I'd got to 10 years, and I'd gone as high as I was going to go. So I just thought, and I wouldn't say I thought I could do it better, but I knew I could do it differently, and in a way that suited me more so. As soon as that came, because I was going to leave anyway, and they said they were doing voluntary redundancy, which I thought would help me. Should be better.
Yeah, exactly.
It helped me get started. So as soon as they said I put my hand up, went in the office, and they said no originally. And I said, look, I've been here 10 years, you owe me that. Yeah. And they said, fair enough. So they gave me the blessing. And they said, I can always come back if I want to go back, but you can go and we'll let you go. So I decided to do a year where I freelance and look at other agencies and just work in as many different agencies as I could, just to see how they run their agencies before I started on my own. ironically, I probably worked in 2 other agencies most of the time. So I didn't really learn that much, but I always had a clear vision in my head how I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And it was this whole honesty thing.
You had the name for like in your head for you.
There's one of the frustrations with large agencies is, I don't want to call anyone out here, but you can sort of, they overinflate what they do to a certain extent to justify large fees. And we used to lose so many creative small clients because of the large fees. And I used to get frustrated, so I thought, I can offer those smaller clients a real honest way of doing things, get the large agency process, but for a small agency fee. And I think that's what inspired me to do this. So I did a year around, and when it got to exactly a year, I said, right, that's it, it's my cut. I've got to self on my own now. And that's what we did. I started with somebody else that helped me out initially, who brought in Jo as her first person in her department.
Yeah. And one client followed from McCann's, didn't they?
Yeah, the authentic food company.
So we've worked with Nick for, well, a long time.
Still
20 years. Yeah. Oh, incredible.
We also kind of closely followed by Jorex. They came in as well. He was one of my clients at McCann's. And then SSL, who owned Jorex, brought their Scholl's shoes, Dr. Scholl. And that came as well. So we hit the ground running quite quickly then.
We were really lucky actually that they followed us.
Yeah, and then we got Reebok quite early on, who we worked with.
We worked with Reebok for about 7 years, but I think that was kind of, well, it got to the point where you needed, yes, I'd worked at McCann's, but I'd also worked at kind of quite a cutthroat B2B agency, and I was working directly for the MD and responsible for 6 million quid's worth of forecasting. And Darren just said, I can't do this without you. I need that business input really. So that's when, I sort of said, right, okay. And then, we did a proposal for Reebok, and Reebok stayed with us for about 7-8 years, didn't they?
Yeah, we did some great projects for them.
But I think once you get a big client on your books, that's it then. Yeah. So, just kind of like gained momentum from that point.
We were really looking to get some good opportunities, and, I believe, you make your own luck, but we were looking to get those opportunities, and we just took them and we got them. Good from there, really.
So then at the point where you sort of got that sort of founding sort of thing that was coming together based on like the situation and the clients coming over, how did you sort of have that initial conversation on like how you wanted to work together? So that sort of, was there a conversation around how it was going to work, or was it literally, like you say, you've got clients in the books now and it's just like sort of learn as you go?
We learned quite quickly not to take stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To keep it separate at first. We do talk about work at home now, don't we?
It's not so bad now because there are 20 of us, but at the start there was like 2 of us in a room, and we didn't speak to each other all day. Because it was just like, what do we talk about? We've got children now, so it's easier. We've got other things to discuss.
We're also on different floors in your note.
But it is hard. I think the biggest kind of lesson that I learned early on was that, and I'm going to generalize a little bit here, but as a woman, you tend to kind of like hold on to things. You hold grudges a little bit longer, I think. And if you've had an argument about something, it's easy to kind of let it fester, I think. But when you work together, you have to leave it out the door, because otherwise it affects everybody else. So from kind of that, but people always say to me, how do you work with your husband? It's like, well, you kind of just make it work, and you've just got to get on with it because you've got the responsibility of other people. So
you have to respect each other's abilities as well, and boundaries. And, Jo debate with me, and we have healthy debates about stuff, but she always bows down to me in terms of design and creative. And I'll bow down to her in terms of business. I'll have my say, she'll listen, and we'll debate it. But usually she knows best in terms of her department.
Yeah, and when you talk about leaving work at the door, I think this is a really important one, because particularly in agency world, it's intense.
Yeah, very.
I used to own an agency myself, and I saw, it's at the best of time, it's intense. And particularly at that early stage when it's, really exciting, launching a new business. How did you do that? How did you actually set that boundary of not bringing work home? Because the temptation would always be there, especially when it's, quite an exciting time of the journey.
I think healthy arguments early on. I think you kind of say, well, we can't do this every evening. We're coming home, debating stuff and talking about work into the evening. So you kind of have to say, well, we need to draw a line and keep it separate, or we'll end up killing each other, physically kill. But I think, you quickly adapt, and I think you either adapt or you won't, and you'll bend or you'll break. And I think we managed to bend to suit the situation.
And I think just going back to what Darren says about kind of that mutual respect, I'm super passionate about what I do and he's really passionate about what he does. And there is that mutual, we don't always agree and we do debate things, but I think we respect each other's opinions. And I think as long as you do that, you can kind of leave it at the door because you've had the discussion and you've agreed on something and you're carrying it forward, really.
We've both got complementary skill sets, so we don't have any crossover. Joe, everything Joe does, I absolutely cannot do. So,
and vice versa, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no sort of me telling Joe how to do her job because I think she knows more about her job than I am. So, but as long as I get to have my say, I'm always happy in that respect.
Yeah.
So it's like that creative angle, isn't it? Then I suppose you've got, you've got a vision of what you want creatively, obviously from a kind of execution point of view. So it sounds like in some ways you've got a healthy sort of fusion of skill sets that allow you to kind of challenge each other's thinking, but have enough space that you've kind of got domains that you're sort of then.
Myself and Joe think very differently. So I'm a creative person. I'm a very optimistic person in terms of what can be achieved if you take money out of it, whereas Joe's always looking at the financial.
Cautious, yeah.
So I'll say, look, I've got a million bruises on my legs from where Joe's kicked me under the table. This is a great project, let's just do it for free if they don't want to pay. Yeah, they didn't come to the table and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But I would happily do my job for free. So, anything we get paid is a bonus, but Joe handles that side of it.
Yeah.
Make sure we do get paid.
It's an important one, this, because it's one of the parts of partnerships that's rarely talked about as money.
Yeah.
And, when we work with startups and things over the years, oftentimes the thing that breaks apart a partnership, the thing that causes the most stress is money, because you end up in the arguments about who's put in more effort or who brought this in, who brought that in, who did this. And particularly with the added domain of, being a married couple as well, how do you broach that side of it? Because I feel like people don't necessarily talk about that part of the partnership journey enough.
It's interesting actually because we've had other people in the business that have done the same job before and there has been that conflict. I think probably what benefits us is that we do a very different job, but everything's always been evenly split, hasn't it? It's never been like any other way really. So we do it together and we're better together and we achieve more. So, it kind of works from that point of view. But I mean, you don't really have a handle on the financial side of anything, do you? You just trust me to.
I grew up with no money, so I think any money I make for doing something I enjoy is a bonus to me. And I don't aspire to have lots of money. I aspire to have enough money, but money's not what motivates me. So I will happily do things for free as long as I can afford to eat. And I can afford to pay the tea, and I think that's it for me. I think I just enjoyed the creative side of things and helping people, working with people, and watching businesses grow.
Yeah.
But obviously, Joe's there pulling the sort of pulling on my coattails. That got to make sure to get pen tapes. These other people in the mid. So I mean, Joe levels it out. I think she's sort of.
Yeah, it's that even piece, isn't it? It's like when we were in the pandemic. So we recently moved to the building that we're in.
Yeah.
And we bought that building in June 2020, which was right bang in the middle of a lockdown, which is the most counterintuitive thing I've ever done in my entire career. So I was just like, oh my goodness, what we're doing. He was like, because we'd wanted to buy a property for a long time, and that one came up, but then literally we went into a lockdown and we were like, are we still going to do this? Are we not going to do this? What's going to happen? And we did it, and it's the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
But we sort of kind of balance it out between us, and we always give arguments to one another, don't we? And then, but at the end of the day, it was a good decision. It's a good investment, and then the good things happen from the back of it, really. So
Fantastic. So it sounds like you definitely had a good journey of sort of getting started, working how you're working, sort of having those different roles and responsibilities. Obviously, you've touched a little bit on the how you were taking work home. What other sort of challenges have you had to sort of overcome on your journey together?
goodness, lots. The children are quite a challenge, aren't they?
Yeah, because obviously you're both working in the same environment, so you both go to the same meeting, you both got one of you's got to leave early to pick the kids up, and so that can often be.
We probably have more debate about that than money, actually. So I'm more busy than you are, or I've got to finish this, so you need to go get the kids. Or that's probably kind of more of a debate, isn't it? I would say.
Yeah, I think it says.
Not that we don't love our children.
We both love to go.
Just for the record.
Yeah. We would just abandon them.
But it's down to those passions, isn't it? Where you kind of, if you're both getting stuck into something, it's a little bit like, you both probably like very driven to want to sort of see the business succeed and work with your clients. And if you're both like in the thick of it, it's almost like who's got to pull themselves away from that thing.
I know I don't like letting clients down. If I say I'm going to do something, I will do it and I'll make sure it gets done. But then equally, I can work from home a little bit easier, whereas Darren can't really. But Darren will say, well, you're more deadline driven, aren't you? So one of the team will set a deadline and he's got that amount of time to do it. And that's pressure on this, as with any agency. So there is that debate. But then you tend to kind of, they're now into football and all sorts. So it's like, picking up early, getting them to the training, getting them to a match, it kind of never ends really. You feel like you're on a bit of a treadmill.
And have you kind of found you've got any strategies, or is that just something that it kind of comes up from time to time, or have you kind of got like a plan of how you kind of manage that?
We do have a plan. We kind of take it in turns of drop off and pick up, but then we just end up being flexible, and I think that's the thing. You've just got to be flexible with one another. Just appreciate that you're in it together.
I had a hard rule when I started coming with it. We're not going to be a sweatshop. We're not going to work. We're not going to work to start past the time they need to work, unless they, some of them stay because they want to, but no one's ever in the office past 6:30.
Yeah.
And I had a hard rule. We don't work weekends and we don't work late unless we absolutely have to and they all want to.
But then equally, if we do have to work late, it's Darren and I that will do that. Yeah. We don't expect the team to do that.
So you're kind of leading from the front.
Yeah, because we've been there, done that, worn the t-shirt, and it's horrible. So, yeah.
Well, just an environment in McCann where you would work once a month through the night and literally not go home, and you'd be there because you were doing a pitch and it was all done outside of our work hours. Or something to do on your desk last minute and everyone would go home and you'd be still there doing it until 2 in the morning.
Slept in the McCann car park
twice a week.
You can
go sleep in your car rather than just go home.
Yeah, and you can't sustain that.
No, it's not.
No, yeah.
Young and you're ambitious. It's kind of something you're happy to do, and say I'd have happily done it for free just to be in that environment at the time. So I was learning so much that it was, I was a willing participant. But I think you can't expect people to do that. Because our industry doesn't pay overtime. You earn what you earn. You do it for the love of it, and especially creatives. So
yeah,
you can't expect people to all think like you, can you?
And we've talked a bit about making sure that you don't take work home. But what about the flip side? How do you make sure everyone has ups and downs in day-to-day life, and how do you make sure that you don't bring that into the workplace either? Because again, I think for a lot of people who are starting businesses when they're a couple or they're partners, I think that's oftentimes a consideration as well. And I've seen it myself. But we've been in to see a client, and the client is a couple, and you can sometimes tell something's maybe not had the best day before. But it is kind of important to make sure you do leave that at the door on the way in too.
Deep intake of breath and walk away. So
yeah.
Well, I'll shut your office door for a while and have a bit of a quiet time. But I think it does happen. It happens, more than you would probably think. But
it doesn't happen very often now, though.
You have debates and disagreements, and I think you just got to give each other a bit of space.
Yeah.
Work out who was.
And the thing is, when you're working together and you're both striving to do great work and do great things, you soon forget about it anyway. And then you sort of, we did have an argument this morning. I can't even remember what it was about. It's that kind of, scenario, really, I think.
I like how you're looking at me when we're talking about debates. We're still very early on our kind of working together journey. So
we're about 40 minutes into our journey, or thereabouts.
Isn't working out.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
The weird thing is, though, what I will say is that I've worked in an agency where Darren wasn't there, and honestly, I haven't worked with a designer as brilliant as Darren is. I've been really putting myself out here because I never pay him a compliment. However, it's really when you see how difficult work can be and how hard it is to do your job, when you've worked with somebody and clicked with somebody and got the chemistry and you can work towards a goal together, it just makes everything easier because you know what each other's thinking and you know how you're going to drive it forward. And I think sometimes it works in your favour that you have that chemistry and you do have that drive. And that trust. Yeah, and a lot of clients will say that, we always bought into you and Darren. We always bought into the chemistry that you bring to the table. And it kind of can work in your favour quite a lot, actually.
I was going to ask you that then. So do you sort of typically pitch together the way that your clients have seen you? That's really great to hear, that sort of is that almost something then that's the way that you are working together is almost acting as a differentiator in the market that you're in?
Yeah, and the position, isn't
It's
it?
hard sometimes because they buy into us, but then it's hard if we try and step away. So it's hard to scale the business in that way. We can't be at every single meeting. But then clients sometimes feel that if we don't go to a meeting, they're getting the second best. And it's not a case of that, it's just a case of scale. We can't be everywhere at the same time and the thing. So it can be a problem as well as being a sort of plus.
We are very visible though, I'd say. And I think that was another thing from like the corporate advertising world that we wanted to avoid. You know, you get the directors rock up to a meeting and then you never see them again. So at the end of the day, if the client buys into you, they buy into you. So
yeah, and the reason I started the business was because I wanted to do design. That's what I wanted to do, and I was getting so senior that I was doing meetings about design, and I was doing meetings about the meetings.
Oh, yeah.
About the meetings. So I was in meetings most of the time, and it's like, I'm a designer, I want to design stuff. It's like being a chef.
yeah.
Suddenly, all of a sudden, you run 50 restaurants, a chain of restaurants, and you're not cooking anymore. It's, you know, the thing I love is working with clients and designing logos and brand marks, and, you know, making things look good. And I think I was starting to miss that a little bit. So what ultimately I can do now is, because I own the company, is I can pick and choose the best jobs.
Exactly.
That I work with. You know, I can pick and choose the clients. I mean, you know, we walk away from clients if we don't feel that we got anything to add.
And so that's a really interesting way of view, almost like the power of like you being together, knowing what you stand for, like you were saying before about that approach and that honesty, that in some ways like you've almost got like a principled approach to how you want to work, which, like you say, there's plenty of other sort of cutthroat agencies out there that will just take on anything for the sake of it.
And also sell people under the, you know, down the river as well. You know, I mean, I'm in a few kind of networking groups with different agencies, and it's like when the pandemic hit, you know, immediately, like, I need to make people redundant straight away because they're just, and I'm living it like a lifestyle business. And, you know, and the reason that I kind of like look after all the business side and the financial side is because I take fiduciary duty really, really seriously. All the people that are sat in my office, I'm responsible for their mortgages and their rent, and that's how, you know, I've got to make sure that they're looked after no matter what. So, and that's how we've always run the business. So, you know, we are, it sounds really cheesy, but we are a family business. So therefore it does feel like you've got a family. And if we have a client that, you know, it isn't very nice or, you know, does something that's a bit unprofessional, we're in the fortunate position that we can walk away. When you start a business, you can't always do that. You've got to take
grow. We're not trying to be a massive international agency. We're trying to stay strong, resisting growth, if anything. We're trying to just keep our offering as it is and just get bigger clients and clients that we want to work with rather than just getting more clients.
Yeah, head count, yeah.
And so how do you, you know, because, you know, you've talked a bit about your different approaches and, you know, you've said that, you know, you're doing the creative and you're doing the business, but with that also comes, you know, a difference in working culture and approach. And I wonder how do you inject the right bits of you into the business to create that culture that works for the team? Because again, you know, we've seen it in lots of companies where if you have, you know, Google's a classic kind of MBA example of this, where you had two founders with two very different personalities, and in the end, one of them effectively had to step aside. But it seems that you've actually managed to almost imbue the right amount of Jo and the right amount of Darren into the culture.
There's no power struggle because I don't want to do what Jo does, and I'm happy for Jo's for the cup.
He's the most reluctant manager that you'd ever meet.
I am the reluctant manager, and I think I'm a reluctant boss like Jo says, and I don't want to be in control of my people, and I'd rather give them autonomy and let them do what I have. So rather than trying to work as a team, we don't have some one person in charge. So I might be part of a team, but not the lead designer, because I like it like that sometimes. And, you know, I like to work with other people and see where they will take things in their own direction. So I think I like to keep it quite flat, the structure of the design team, really. And it doesn't matter if you just joined us as an 18-year-old or you've been with us 10 years and you're 45. You've got the same autonomy if you do, as long as you deliver. You know, anyone can have a great idea.
I think there's different motivations though when you're a designer, because you follow the creativity and variety of work, and there's different motivators. I always find designers aren't about money, they're about doing great work and getting recognition for it. I think my team's probably kind of a little bit more money orientated, but it's hard to find the right people and the right fit. And my management style is very different from Darren's, but Darren's actually a really, really good manager because he just empowers people. And if he's got to have a difficult conversation, you don't like doing it, but you will do it and do it quite well. Whereas, and I learned kind of the hard way a number of years ago that if something's in the difficult box, you've got to deal with it there and then. And so we have kind of quite a transparent and open culture, I would say. Really transparent about the numbers, really transparent about what we're doing, how we're going to grow, what our ambitions are. And there's no secrets, but it's the truth way, isn't it? There's no secrets anywhere. So, and I think people are quite, the right persons get receptive to that. And I always say to people when I interview them, for the wrong person, this is a really intimidating environment because you've got people here with 30, 40 years experience. And if you are intimidated by that experience, then this isn't the place for you. But if you are a sponge and you want to learn from people that have done it, seen it a million times over, then you can learn everything you could possibly learn here. And it's almost got a bit of a entrepreneurial culture, hasn't it? Because you almost like empower the team to make their own way. And we both kind of do that, really, haven't we?
I think it makes it interesting for people and, it gives them a palette to paint with, so to speak. So I think you're not controlling them, you're giving them the freedom to be creative. Because I think when you're creative, you need that freedom. Otherwise, you're scared to open your mouth or have a good idea. If you feel intimidated. So once you've got that freedom to create anything that you can, then people are more open to doing that, I think.
It's really interesting hearing how you both like to work, and then like the ethos of what you've created with Truth. It's almost like, to what Vic has said around how you've imbued yourselves, it's almost like the authenticity of your creative process allows that like autonomy and space to probably get the best out of people. And then obviously what you're bringing is making it like commercially viable, and you're having that, like really honest, open approach about, like creating an environment that allows people to work in a way and allows you to work in the way that you want to work. So it's really nice to sort of see those threads like coming through around what you've created.
I was always proud to treat people how you want to be treated yourself. So I always just treat my team how I would want to be treated. And would I like someone saying that to me? And I'll sort of then I'll take somebody else. It doesn't matter what level you're at. I think that applies. And I think if you just treat people how you want to be treated, then everyone should be. Not everyone's the same, but if you treat them fairly, then they'd respect you for it after. I thought.
So if I can just go back in time for a moment, because at the beginning of that journey again, and I know we kind of maybe keep coming back to that a little bit, but it is quite a pinch point for a lot of people starting out in partnerships. And there's the element of kind of, the advice from the circles around you. And there's plenty of occasions where you'll get, a couple who want to work together and their friends are always, oh, don't do it. This is going to go wrong. That's going to go wrong. And I wonder how you approach that as well. Like, how did you, if that was part of your journey, how did you approach those conversations with friends? Because naturally, the people around you are looking out for you. But sometimes, particularly when you're starting a business and particularly when you're doing it together, they might not be looking out for you in the best way.
I think partly because we'd always worked together.
So there was less of a risk.
I see. And I think, actually, probably my dad probably gave me the most advice.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask for advice, but he gave it anyway.
And what was his advice?
So my dad's run his own business for most of his life. He's 76, he's still going. That's kind of where I get it from. And he said, whatever you do, separate the two. Whatever you do, just you cannot have, one going into the other and vice versa. You've got to separate it.
Could we work apart? We don't know because we've never really done that.
Well, no, I was at Gyro for about 2.5 years, and I hated it. I missed working with Darren. I was working with a team, and I just thought, the beauty of what Darren does in his product is that it kind of sells itself. And he's got this kind of amazing ability to think strategically and creatively. I do a lot of the brand strategy, but he's kind of got both sides of the coin, which is rare because normally you're one or the other, and he has both. So when I was working without Darren, I'd look at a piece of creative and I'd be like, oh my God, how am I going to sell this? I've got to sell this. I've got to dress it up and really post-rationalise it. Don't have to do that, Truth, because the creative product is so well thought through with that design thinking lens across it that it makes my job easy, really. It's not a struggle.
Similarly, Joe's a very good people person, so if you put Joe in a room with 50 people, just go out with 10 new friends. Put me in a room with 50 people.
He doesn't like speaking to strangers, do you?
Strangers, and I don't like small talk, so I just like to if it, you know, coming to me if people are sitting in the corner on me, I'll quite happily and not talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Which isn't great when you do my job. But I think once I know people, I'll chat all day. But I think new business meetings, Jo just makes great relationships with people. Everyone seems to like. She knows how to deal with people, and I think I haven't got a passion for that, and I don't need it in my life.
Yeah.
I can be designing stuff. I like to just sit there and design things, and that's all things that detract me from doing that. But it's essential to running a business. So Jo's great at doing that. So, and it means I don't have to do, which is great. So
if anything, did you always like have friends around you, colleagues that you'd work with, like you from those places who were almost like egging you on to
Well,
like, oh
yeah,
my God,
'cause
you'd be brilliant together?
I'm not from Manchester originally, so I grew up in Halifax, and then I went to uni in York, came back, worked in Leeds for about 18 months, and then was desperately trying to get into the advertising industry. And so a lot of my mates from kind of uni were all over the country as is normal. So when I moved to Manchester, I didn't really know anybody. And I think I moved to Manchester in the April, and then we went on a first date in the August. So, and then Darren's friends became my friends. So it just kind of, or it was people that we worked with,
Can we ask what the first date was?
Yeah, it was the rectory in Will.
Oh, amazing. I remember that place. Bright purple. It was good fun.
Yeah.
The rectory was great.
some food afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a bit keen because he asked, that was on the Friday night, and then the Saturday.
Proposed.
Well, I mean, he nearly did. So, yeah, and then he said, should we go see a film tomorrow night? And I was like, oh my God, he's a bit right keen.
Mark at that.
Well, exactly. Exactly. You know, well, why mess around? If you know, our first date was kebabish and rush home, followed by me going grocery shopping to Asda. Because I wasn't completely sure it was a date at this point.
I think he was just testing if after that, just sort of,
then it's
not trying to bowl me over. We met through sort of a working relationship as well. So I was at an agency and he was the client. So that was kind of like, oh well, this gentleman's rather interesting. Should we go for a coffee and have a chat outside of the meeting? And then, like you say, the rest is history.
I'm very much all in though. Once I've committed something, I'm all in. I'll go for it 100%. So don't like to mess about it.
No.
Once I've decided something, I'll just 100%.
I mean, he pretty much trapped me from, day one: job, business, house, children, property, Manchester.
And Darren, given you're the designer, I'm guessing, did you do most of the design for the wedding?
Yes.
I did actually.
You
Yeah.
hate doing
good man.
hates doing wedding invites though. It's like a designer's worst nightmare.
Photographers getting to see your wedding photography stuff. It's just it's the one thing you just dread people because everyone gets really personal about stuff like that, don't they?
Everything was white. There was no colour.
Oh wow.
You kept a consistent, very minimalist, clean colour palette.
It's the good job it wasn't the Hassy end of phase. Because I got those as well.
And obviously you sort of mentioned, we talked about friends having advice for you work together and your family. Like, so what advice would you kind of give to other people about how you sort of get the best out of working together as a husband and wife partnership?
I think you've just got to respect each other's opinions as you would in your marriage. It's easy, isn't it? And it's like marriage. Marriage isn't easy. Marriage is difficult. It's give and take. It's compromise, and it's respecting each other's opinions. And you don't have to agree on everything. And I think it's healthy not to agree on everything. We've kind of got this big kind of echo chamber at the minute, haven't we? Kind of as a society where we've all got to think the same. And God forbid, should you have a different opinion, you're a bad person for not thinking the same as everybody else. And I just think everyone's opinion is valid. You might not agree with them, but that's okay. Positive friction is a good thing. And I think if you bring that into your workspace and you respect one another, then I think it does work. I think if you undermine one another and you don't give one another the time to have your own opinion and make that count, then I think it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and you've got to define the roles and the boundaries and, who's responsible for what, who has final say on things. I think as long as you stick to that, hopefully you're okay. And then, there will come times when that's tested. But it's down to respect and just, knowing when you're right and who's wrong. And something having to back down sometimes when you don't really want to. But
yeah, it's picking battles. We've got a teenage son, haven't we?
So there's plenty of battles.
Oh God, yeah. but you just sometimes you're like, do I want to have this fight? No. So you pick your harder battles and you leave the other stuff.
And I suppose the teenagers now, it doesn't matter how much you switch off your Wi-Fi, there's always another network nearby.
There's always something with a screen.
I'm sure he's going to end up with like a hunched back by the time he's like 18. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, it's picking your battles. I think it's knowing when to let something go and knowing when you feel really passionate about something and presenting the right arguments, really.
So here's a question. So obviously, you've mentioned that you have kids. Was it 2? You have 2? Yes.
Yeah.
Now, did that change your approach to the extent that did that change almost the what matters part of your value set, and thus did it change how you work together?
I don't know if I always say Truth is my third child, so
I won't ask which is your favourite child.
It's hard when you're,
yeah, I mean, so when we had Dylan, there was only 4 of us. And I managed to take 9 months off with Dylan, actually, which didn't feel like that long, but it was quite nice. But then with Cooper, 5 years later, we were a big team.
So the laptop to the hospital.
I remember writing a brand proposition for Robinson's Brewery on the sofa while sat with Cooper, because there was nowhere else to do it, and I'd got cover, but again, people buy into me and Darren, so it's your reputation, and you're only as good as the last job that you did, and it was always important for me to keep that momentum. So I probably took about 4 months off with Cooper, but still kind of worked at home and then literally dived back into Truth.
Your parents helped.
Yeah, and my parents were, well, my mum and my dad were still working, but my mum was amazing. So again, because my dad has always had his own business, she understood the demands of running your own business. So the second I announced that I was pregnant, she decided to take early retirement and help. So
Now lived with us in the week.
lived with us for 2 days a week.
That's really interesting. You've always got that family dynamic, like you say, you're touching on like your parents' experience of having business and like having that as the kind of surrounding context, then that in itself creates like understanding and a support network where, like you say, maybe for some people if they're the first in their family to kind of do that, then you've probably maybe got a different conversation around how your family can support you on that.
Yeah, and my dad he's very, very different. He always had his own jewellery business, so it's a very, very different business. But he will periodically impart pieces of advice on me. So, I remember asking him when we first started, at what point, Dad, will I stop worrying? Wake up in the night and think, where's the money coming? Blah, blah, blah. And he went, about 40 years. So, and then you wake up and realise there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So
Yes, exactly right.
So, yeah. So the things like that, he would sort of kind of impart. But I think what I always took from my dad, and my mum worked as well, but what I always took from my dad was that work ethic and that drive and that passion. And he, like Darren, he loves his job. He loves what he does. And I think as a kid, we wouldn't see him at Christmas, because Christmas is always like the really busiest time for the jewellery trade. But in the summer, he would take 3 weeks off work. We'd drive to France, we'd go Euro camping, and we'd have 3 weeks of pure dad time, and mum, but and you value those points in your childhood more, I think. But what it instilled in me was like that work ethic and that drive. And I think I was always going to go to uni, and I was always going to do something like this, because it's that leading by example, really. I just hope our 2 are paying attention in a good way.
Well, I'm sure they are. I think when they see the passion that you put into your work and your creativity and how you work together, I think whether they admit it now or not, I'm sure they're taking notes. Yeah. And we will in a moment obviously finish on a positive note, but one thing again which is often not discussed when people set up partnerships is what happens if it goes wrong.
That's a good question.
And I've had friends who are couples who started a business, and when their marriage hits a blip, as sometimes they do, it becomes a big problem. And I wonder, because it's not something that couples ever like to talk about, because let's all hope it doesn't happen, but is that a conversation you've ever had to broach, especially as your business grows and becomes more material, the kind of what ifs scenarios?
We did a what if right at the start, didn't we? Because we said, what if it fails? And then we both you said, well, I'll just get a job. And I said, I'd just get a job.
Out together initially, wasn't
Yeah, we
it? It was comfortable putting all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And rightly so. So we kind of sort of, that's why I started on my own with somebody else, and then Joe came on board later because it was more secure at the time. I think we've never really discussed the worst case scenario over in terms of what we've got.
No, we've had our challenges, haven't we? Like putting our personal lives, we've had like really kind of, I would say marriage breaking things happen. But I think, I always say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah. And it is true.
And we know that we're stronger together. So we just carry, I've got a very much like, Darren laughs, he calls me Monica, but I just carry on. I just carry on and carry on. And then like,
Nothing in the cupboard.
if I always think if I carry on, then it'll all be all right. And I don't know, we're both probably quite stubborn. I think I don't like quitting. You were really stubborn. Like we
I won't panic about anything because I'm a designer. I'm always taught to offer a solution. So
Yeah.
it's a problem. My own automatic reaction is, what we're going to do about it? How can we solve the problem? Not panic of the build.
I don't know if this is your quote or if you stole it, but Darren always says difficult is lots of easies put together.
Oh, I like that. We're going to clip that. We'll clip that out.
I don't know if he nicked it from someone.
Well, we're going to attribute it to you anyway.
Yeah.
That's like the nice, like, inverted quotes from a conversation.
And so now, as the more positive and upbeat part of our partnership, I will throw it across to Rachel for a very positive closing question.
Oh, really? I feel like I am sometimes the one that does think about like, the what ifs. Have we thought about this? So I'm glad that you do see me in a positive light, because I do sometimes think like I'm a little bit occasionally can be like, what is going on here? Have we got the plan? But I'm a planner by nature.
I'm the same. Like,
yeah.
I always think we balance each other out, really.
Yeah. So I think the question we were going to sort of like wrap up with almost was a little bit of a turning the tables around. Obviously, you've been working together for quite a number of years now, and obviously we're embarking on a new kind of partnership in this space. It was almost like what sort of interesting questions might you want to sort of challenge us to sort of think about or consider?
I think you've got to really decide for yourself what you want to achieve, and if you can do that better together. I know I'm not a good account handler or a good brand strategist without Darren, and I think he challenges me and I challenge him. So my question would be, are you happy to take criticism off one another? Because that's the hardest bit, I think. And also I think
You also have to think how you're going to react if the other person follows his up monumentally.
Yeah.
How you react to that, because natural reaction is to go berserk. But really, you got to kind of think, well, how are we going to get out of this? And I think you just got to sometimes take a deep breath and solve the problem.
Well, it's an interesting one because already, like in this dynamic, like Vikas has had his interview series before with Thought Economics, so you've almost got the difference of very seasoned kind of natural conversation podcast host, where like this is me kind of coming to it newer. So there's almost like a different dynamic where it's like they're playing to each other's strengths. But then almost the fact that we would look, our ultimate aim is to create some kind of business together. But it's the whole thing like, what is that moment in time and that opportunity? So right now, it's like we're not forcing, let's just create an idea for the sake of it. It feels like this is almost like an organic starting place to see where we go from.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I felt for a number of years at the beginning like I was in Darren's shadow and that Truth was Darren's agency. Because it was his brainchild and he always wanted to do it, I almost came to it as a bit of a default. And he said to me, I need you. So I felt, not because I would have necessarily, I might have done, but I don't know if without Darren I would have ended up doing this in this industry.
When we had the debate, your go-to position was, well, it's your agency.
It's your agency.
And then, I had to condition Joy into understanding that he wasn't in my agency. It was our agency.
I don't know what the tipping point was. I think for me, it was a bit of imposter syndrome. And there's a label for it now. There was back then.
Yeah.
But kind of, I always felt like I was pretending at it. Like I didn't know what I was doing, really. I did know what I was doing, but it was having the confidence. And I think when you're at the top as well, and certainly when you start to employ a team underneath you, who do you go to? Who do you ask? you know, and I'd be like, I'm not going to ask Darren because like, he's my husband. So I need to, this is my realm. What do I, you know? And I used to rely on our accountant a lot. Like she's an amazing, amazing person and has always supported us, but she doesn't know our industry. So my other biggest piece of advice is have an external mentor to a business. I've had a mentor for a few years now, and he's completely unrelated to our industry. He's a sales transformation director. He was at BAE Systems, so he knows nothing about what we do, but was able to be my go-to, bounce ideas. And I think that's healthy in a marriage, that when you're building a business, because you have that outsider perspective and they can tell you that you're wrong. And sometimes you'll accept that more than if your partner tells you that you're wrong as well. But I think you have to have the confidence in your own conviction. And I don't know what the tipping point was, but it got to a point where I was like, no, actually, I'm bloody good at this job. And this is my agency as much as it is Darren's. And without me, it wouldn't have grown. It'd have stayed the same, doing free work with kicks under the table. So yeah, I am right.
Well, there's the brand for non-profit agency. Kicks under the table. That, to be fair, that has to be the name of your foundation one day. The Kicks Under the Table Foundation. Yeah. But honestly, it's been such a pleasure having you as our first guest, because whilst it's cheesy of me to say, I think you really do espouse the whole fact of being better in tandem, which is kind of why we wanted to explore conversations where actually oftentimes it is a partnership that makes things work. So really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us. Make sure you like, share and subscribe at betterintandem.com.